Hello and welcome back to the Beefy Tech channel. This beautiful pile of wires with some tech attached to it is actually a 7900 XTX and a 14900K. Yes, the most blasphemous PC combination you can currently buy. Not only that, it currently holds the crown for being the least efficient PC you could also possibly buy. Regardless, these are my settings that I'll be using for the 7900 XTX, and if you've seen my 14900K, you know it's running at 6GHz with DDR5 8000. The first game we're going to be taking a look at is of course Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 Warzone. So, as you can see over here, the results are extremely strong, but what you may notice is that the 7900 XTX is the bottleneck. So yes, if you did have a 14900K paired with a 4090 instead of a 7900 XTX, you would be getting more FPS in this exact location on this exact map. The 1% lows do seem to be driven by the 14900K though, because it indeed has the exact same 1% lows as I've seen on my 4090. But unlike the 4090, the 7900 XTX is drawing nearly 400 watts consistently in this part, whereas the 4090 would often be at 250 to 300. So yes, currently this system is hitting 600 watts consistently, and hey, if you go to a different part of the map, you'll even see upwards of 700 watts at times, which is absolutely insane power draw, and if you really want to see your power bill go up, this is the system for you. And just because I know there's going to be the one smartass in the comments that's going to roast me for having SAM disabled, this is Call of Duty, I specialize in Call of Duty, and let me just tell you that with these exact parts, in this exact game, having Smart Access Memory on is a huge mistake. You're basically destroying your FPS consistency. Even though you do gain more GPU performance, you're hurting the CPU, and therefore your 1% lows tend to take quite a toll, as you'll see towards the end of this run. Basically, if you have either a 14900K or a 7900 XTX, they don't have to be paired together, I highly recommend you keep SAM disabled or resizable bar disabled for Call of Duty in specific. Now mind you, if you have the 7900 XTX, you'll have to fully disable SAM within the app. If you have a 4090 or another NVIDIA GPU with a 14900K, you can just simply disable it in the config file. But as you can see, the run's coming to an end, 1% lows are 20 lower, which goes to show that SAM or resizable bar is good to keep off for this exact rig. The second game that I decided to put to the test on this rig is Palworld. The reason I wanted to test it is because it's a really popular game right now and a lot of people will be playing it, meaning that if you do by any chance make the mistake to buy this exact rig, you'll now know the performance of it. And honestly, it is just a fully GPU bound experience. We're hitting the maximum GPU wattage, maximum GPU usage, meaning that the CPU doesn't play as big of a role here, and that goes to show by the fact that the CPU wattage is lower than it was in Warzone, that is a lot more demanding on the CPU. Mind you, I'm running the server off of this machine, which means the CPU does get taxed a bit more than usual, but because we're so GPU bound on this game, it doesn't seem to particularly matter. The FPS isn't incredible over here, and I do want to mention that SAM is enabled for this game. I only disabled SAM for the purposes of Call of Duty, so in this game you're seeing SAM on performance. Basically though, the 7900 XTX is the entire problem. If you see a stutter of any sort in this game, it's from the 7900 XTX, not the 14900K, because we're so GPU bound, it all comes down to that 7900 XTX performance. Overall though, it's satisfying performance, but as you can see, when you go to capture one of these Pokemon looking things, your FPS takes a huge toll in the 1% lows. This could be a game optimization thing, but I don't have enough experience with the game to know for sure. I'm gonna spoil a little secret and say that I have tested Palworld with a 7800 X3D and 4090, and no joke, this was a better experience than with a 7800 X3D and 4090 in terms of overall smoothness. I do genuinely think this is one of those games that just prefers Intel CPUs. It does happen where, you'll have a game that prefers a CPU manufacturer, and this seems to be the type of game that prefers Intel, because even with a 7900 XTX, this was a very decent experience overall, and I only really had issues when throwing the Pokeballs at the chicken-looking things, and other than that, the game was fairly smooth, with just the average FPS of the 7900 XTX not being insane, but still very playable and overall good. And with that said, we have a perfect segue onto a game that does not run well on the 7900 XTX at all, and that would be Dying Light 2. The reason I always love to test this game is just to bring a very good reminder that AMD GPUs still occasionally have trouble with some games in terms of smoothness. So, This game has huge stutters when you have an AMD GPU. Huge stuff. Basically, you're maxing out your GPU power draw and you're using a lot of CPU wattage too, only to have a pretty shitty experience overall. Genuinely, my 3080 laptop plays smoother than this in this game, even though it gets less FPS. What you'll notice with the 1% lows and the frame time line is that there will be occasional spikes, and those spikes you really feel in this game, like they are really bad. Not only that, we're nearly hitting a consistent 650 to occasionally 700 watt power draw for the system, which is stupendous for how many stutters there were in this entire experience. But what I do notice is that if you play the game for a bit and just let the area load, eventually the stutters disappear. So you'll notice I played for a while and now I fast forwarded, and the 1% lows have settled and the frame time line looks perfectly smooth. So this could yet again be a game optimization thing, but I'm willing to say it's more of an AMD thing because when I tested on the 4090, this was not a problem. So I have no idea why the 7900 XTX runs this badly at first and then just settles and just works perfectly fine and doesn't stutter anymore, but basically it's not a great experience to start with, and it does make you feel like you don't have a high-end GPU when you really do, given how expensive the 7900 XTX is. And yeah, I'm blaming the XTX over the 4900K because I tested the 4900K with the 4090 in this game and it was a buttery smooth experience. And while I know that some of you will be happy to see Rust up on here, you'll be sad to know that it's kind of the same experience as Dying Light 2, in that it begins really choppy. The more you walk into the map, it starts to settle off. And overall, I didn't change any settings other than just making sure the game's running native 1440p and disabling motion blur and frame caps. I went in a 100-person server in EU, and I just started running the benchmark, and basically you'll see that the 1% lows are horrific to start off and it basically stutters constantly, but we wait about a minute or two of walking and then it settles off and the 1% lows are good. Seems the map is loaded, and yeah, indeed this time we're actually CPU bound, so it's not really the fault of the 7900 XTX, it's rather the fault of the 4900K that this game is not initially smooth, but I'm assuming it just loads shaders to begin with. It doesn't preload them, and when you first load, it has to load all the shaders, and that's why it's not smooth to begin with. But once it settles off, it's a much better experience, and I'd argue I actually like the way the game performs, more or less. But basically, if you go to a new part of the map, it is probably gonna stutter again the way it did at the very beginning. The final game we'll be testing today is indeed CS2. This game is quite a mixed bag for me because every time I test it, I kind of risk my trust factor because I have to enable third-party software to run MSI Afterburner, but anyway, disregarding that, I ran basically high settings with a couple things tweaked and 1440p native, uncapped FPS in a team deathmatch with 20 players, and the FPS was unsurprising and, well, not really amazing. It was okay. Like 370 FPS at 100% GPU usage means the 7900 XTX was the sole bottleneck, but it makes it quite an uninteresting result. And especially given the 1% lows aren't spectacular either, but yeah, I'm glad to report it was an extremely unoffensive experience, but neither an amazing one. So what are my final thoughts on this system? Well, if any of you have this system, I am sorry for you because your electricity bill must be through the roof. Holy moly, does this system draw an insane amount of power, seeing upwards of 700 watts on some games from just CPU and GPU is mind-boggling, meaning that the system probably pulls about 800, which is crazy, like outright crazy. Nearly double what you would with a 7800X3D and a 4090, and you get way less performance, but hey, it is what it is. It's still a system that some people will inevitably build, and can't blame them. It offers good performance because the 7900 XTX is a lot better value than the 4090, but then again, it is definitely way less efficient, and when you pair it with an inefficient CPU like the 14900K, mind you, it is inefficient because it's heavily overclocked, but if you want the maximum performance, you'll have to run the overclocks as I've shown, and then again, that means the PC will be inefficient. But oh well. To each their own. Some people won't even overclock their system anywhere near to what I've got it, so maybe they won't have this issue. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I hope it was insightful on what a wacky combo like this one actually performs like. Have a good one, and peace.